Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, which will be covering the Fixed Assets module in SAP Business One. My name is Tracy Neal-Gaylor and I'm a SAP Business One consultant with Realtech New Zealand Limited. The version of fixed assets that I'll be showing you today is SAP Business One 9.2, but this module has been in Business One as a standard module since version 9, and there have only been a couple of enhancements between that version and this one. Prior to version 9, the fixed assets module was an add-on module. So the agenda today is going to cover the setups required, the fixed asset master data record, acquisition and capitalisation of assets, depreciation of assets, disposal and retirement of assets, and the standard reports that come with the fixed asset module. So first of all, the setups. In order to even see anything about fixed assets in your menus, you have to enable fixed assets, and this is done by going to Administration, System Initialization, Company Details, and on the Basic Initialization tab you can see that there is a checkbox here to enable fixed assets. The other choice you have as well is to whether you would like your depreciation calculated on a monthly basis or on a prorated daily basis. All the other setups for fixed assets are found under Setup, Financials, Fixed Assets. And these 5 areas are the areas that we're going to be looking at for the setups. First of all, account determination. This is how the system knows where to put the journals when you acquire or dispose an asset and when you depreciate your assets. We use a asset clearing account when we dispose and acquire assets, and this is just a special account that can be set up in your chart of accounts. Normally I'd set up one account determination for each asset class because they're going to be pointing to different accumulated depreciation accounts, asset accounts, and even different depreciation accounts for each type of asset that you have. So you can see I've got one for office equipment and motor vehicles and IT equipment, as well as the one that I just showed you for plant and machinery. Next is depreciation types. These are usually things like straight line or diminishing value. In New Zealand, you get other ones come as standard when you initialise the Enable Fixed Assets module, but they're not usually used in New Zealand. Straight line is quite easy. You just need the one depreciation type set up for straight line because the calculation can be done as acquisition value divided by total useful life. The diminishing value ones have to be set up as individual types because they each have a separate calculation or a separate percentage on them. So you could have hundreds of DV types. They're not too hard to set up, and once you get going you can use the duplicate function to create new diminishing value depreciation types. Next is the depreciation areas, and this is simply the difference between your book depreciation and tax depreciation. So the book depreciation is the one that creates journals and posts to your general ledger. The other area is the additional area which I've named tax depreciation. This area does not generate any journals, but you can run reports based on this tax depreciation area. Next is asset classes, and this is what brings together all of the previous setups that we've just done. So asset classes for things like buildings, IT equipment, motor vehicles, and this is where you say which depreciation areas you're going to use for these classes, what account determination you're going to use, what the default depreciation type is, and what the default useful life in months is. You can also have an asset group, which is what I'm going to show you next. As I say, all these determinations, depreciation types and useful life is just a default for an asset class, and individual assets can have different useful lives and different depreciation types. So the attribute groups that I've got, I've set up one for motor vehicles, which includes extra fields for the colour, the registration number and the warranty expiry date in my case. You can set up as many of these attributes as you want, and they can be different types like text or numeric or date or amount or price. You've got 64 of them, so there's plenty of scope to play with. Okay, the fixed asset master data record now, and that's found under financials, fixed assets, asset master data. Now you can see that this looks remarkably similar to an inventory item. And in fact, that's exactly what it is. It's an inventory item, but it has got a special item type called fixed assets. The inventory item button is greyed out, and it's got a handy little tab here called fixed assets. Underneath the main tab, there are 5 sub-tabs, and I'll take you through each one. Meanwhile, up the top here, we've also got another concept called virtual items, and this is for when people are buying a large quantity of the same asset and they want individual master records for each one. So if, say, you were buying 100 keyboards, you didn't want to sit there for 3 hours creating 100 asset master records for each keyboard, so you can create a virtual item for a keyboard and then use that when you buy 100 keyboards, and it will automatically create 100 fixed asset master records for you. Right, these sub-tabs. The overview first of all. This first of all shows you the status of the asset class that it belongs to. You can set up separate groups for assets as well. Like in the motor vehicles, I've set up cars and trucks as asset group just to differentiate between your assets. There's no functionality behind this, it's just another way that you can do your reporting if you like. You can have depreciation groups, and there's a field here for inventory numbers and serial numbers, locations if you like, technician, the employee who's going to be using this particular asset the most, or whose office it resides in. And over on the right hand side we've got a summary area of the financials for you, what it was bought for, what the net book value is at the end of this current financial year, and what any ordinary depreciation is that's been posted or will be posted for this particular asset for this year. Down the bottom here we've got this area where the depreciation start date is recorded, the useful life and the remaining useful life, and the depreciation type that is in the system for it. Under the Values tab, this is another summary of the financials for this particular asset, what's happened, what it was bought for, how much it's going to be depreciated for throughout the year, and what the value is going to be at the end of the year for this particular asset. Under the Depreciation tab, you can see all the planned depreciation for this asset and what's actually been posted so far. Under the Cost Accounting tab, this is where you can assign this asset to a particular cost centre for a particular period. So for this period from the 1st of May, the Auckland business unit has got this particular asset and will be charged the depreciation for it. Next month I might have gone to Wellington for the month, and so the business unit could be changed to Wellington from a particular date to a particular date, and then the depreciation charge will be added to the Wellington cost centre. You can also do this for projects as well. And attributes, because this is in the motor vehicle asset class, it's got the motor vehicle attributes on it, which is the colour, the registration number and the warranty expiry date. So that's the asset master record. I'm just going to create a new one for you now, and to do that we click on the new button. I've set it up to create an automatic fixed asset number, just building on the last number, and I always buy myself a new car when I do this. Okay, now overview, we select the asset class, put it into its group. I'm going to put Marilyn as my employee because she's my chauffeur. And that's all I need to do to add. I can put the attributes on if I know them at this point. Of course it's going to be red. Registration number. And the warranty expiry date will be the 3 years' time. And we can add that as a master record. Yes, I do want to continue. Right, so now I've created the asset master record, I can go and buy it. So to do that, I can simply go to purchasing and put in an AP invoice. Because I created the master record and I said that it was a purchased item, it now appears in the item area for this invoice. Unit price is going to be 50,000. Thank you very much. And if I was buying something with multiple units, such as chairs or things like that, I could put a quantity in here. So if I was buying 6 chairs for the boardroom and I just wanted to create the one asset for it, I can put a quantity in and also tick this consider quantity field, and that will put the quantity of 6 on the asset, and then you'll be able to sell off 1 chair or dispose 1 chair out of the 6. However, this particular example is just 1 Aston Martin, so we're going to add that now. Okay, so if we go and have a look at that, we can go to the accounting tab and see that the journal created for that was just your normal AP invoice, going credit to the creditor, debit the GST, and debiting the asset clearing account in this case. The very next journal that was created automatically after this particular journal is the capitalisation document journal, and that just clears out the asset clearing account and debits the motor vehicle asset account. Okay. If you haven't created your asset master record before you have to pay for it, you can create an AP service invoice and put the asset clearing account as the GL account there, and then manually go and do the capitalisation once you have created the asset master record. And that capitalisation is done under financials, fixed assets, capitalisation. And that last record is the one that was created automatically for my new Aston Martin. After you've got your assets, you want to depreciate them on a fairly regular basis, and you do that under fixed assets again and depreciation run. Now I've got a record of all the depreciations that have been run up until now, and I can do a preview of the next depreciation run. So if I have a look at that now, I can see that the things that are going to be depreciated is a negative depreciation for an asset that I've disposed, and a depreciation, 1 month's depreciation for this Aston Martin. Oh, it's actually 2 months because it's April and May. If I execute that, that will create a journal, and if I have a look at that, that's the journal entry there, going to debit depreciation and credit the accumulated depreciation from motor vehicles. And it's as simple as that, and it's very fast as well. The next thing is when you want to dispose or retire an asset. Now you can do that simply by selling it on an AR invoice, and that will create your all your depreciation entries, depreciation and disposal entries required by the system. I will find one to sell now. We're going to go to sales AR. First of all, I have to make the asset master record a sales item in order for it to appear on an AR document. So if I have a look through some of these, and okay, that one's still inactive. Okay, I'm going to sell this particular SSVAT 3. Okay, so I'm going to make that a sales item there, which it already is, and now go into sales AR, AR invoice, put a customer on there, and then go and sell. Okay, the price after discount I'm going to sell this VAT for is $200. And I can add that. Okay, and if I have a look at the accounting for that, you can go into the journal. So normal AR journal entries there, and immediately after is a disposal journal, which takes care of your accumulated depreciation and gets rid of the asset for you. Also accounts for any gain or loss on disposal. Another way of disposing of an asset could be just scrapping it and getting rid of it out of your system, basically, and that is done directly in the financials fixed assets retirement document, and in this case the transaction type instead of sales will be scrapping, and in that case there is no money changing hands for it, but it is getting rid of the asset out of your system. Okay, and finally the fixed asset reports that come standard with the fixed assets is under fixed assets reports. There's 4 of them. The main one to use is the asset history sheet. This is what I would be giving to the accountants or the auditors, which shows you everything about all of your assets that you've got in the system, whether they've been acquired or disposed during the year, how much depreciation has been charged for them, and all the other general information about acquisition date and useful life and remaining life and what depreciation types are that you're using for these particular assets. Another useful report is the asset transaction report, which can be done on a particular asset by itself. So right click on there and you get the asset transaction report for this particular asset, and this shows you exactly what's happened during the life of this asset. If you want the same report for all your assets or a group of your assets, then you can just go to asset transaction report, which is in your reports, and okay, I'll get everything. So this gives me a whole big long report for all of my assets that I've got and what's happened to them over their lifetimes. Okay, asset status report and asset depreciation forecast report is also available. At the end of the financial year, the fiscal year change process has to be done. This is just simply changing from your current year, in which case 2017, to 2018 in my case, and that's just going to roll over all the values, all the closing net book values from the previous year will become the opening net book values from the current year. All the depreciation will be recalculated for the new year so that it can go onto each asset as a proposed depreciation amounts. And that's all I have for you today about fixed assets. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some information out of it, and I hope you're going to continue to attend our fairly frequent webinars that we're going to be giving. Thank you and goodbye.